Hello, CWF Universe. I just need to get. Whoa, 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 whoa. I hear myself. That is not good. One moment, one moment. Sorry about that. Hello, CWF Universe. It's back. It's G again with another episode of Backstage Pass. The overlay is not working right now, so I'm going back to the old classic logo. Hey, this is a special Wednesday episode. Things were a little hectic in my life these past few weeks, so I apologize that I haven't been able to maintain the episodes, the current track. So think of this as kind of like the catch up episode, the one that kind of we put in to get shifts back into focus. So I got two wonderful guests here today. Let me introduce them to you. The first, you know him, he's here a lot, he yells a lot, and he has very strong opinions. It's our one and only Ian. How you doing, Ian?
I'm great. Thank you for that introduction. I loved it.
Was it accurate?
It was completely accurate.
Yes. And joining us today you know them, you love to boo them, and you've actually cheered for them. Our residential clown fan and theory connoisseur, Jack. Welcome back, Jack.
Hey, yo, what's up?
Hey, Jack. So, first off, before we start the conversation, I just once again want to plug our social media. Please, if you want to get updates, especially now that we're about to hit the busy season, please make sure you follow us on Cosplay Wrestling Federation on Facebook, the CWF Network on Twitch, and of course our Twitter, the CWF Universe. And we have a Patreon, links below. Yes, our this show is not free. It costs us a lot of money to do, and that's in addition to just cosplay in general, which is a very expensive hobby. So I'd like to take this time to thank a lot of our patrons at the $3 and above tier. So thank you very much for Randy Grinds, Magical Senpai, and Jimmy Mai. Your money is being well used in making sure that we have all the necessary internet charges paid for. So thank you very much. Your contribution.
also, don't forget, we have a Discord for our fans. If you guys want to join in and talk about past shows, future shows, where you possibly like to see us next, because some of us are in there, you can go into that as well.
Oh, and what is the Discord address, or where can you find it?
You can find it down in the links below, actually. There is a spot for the Discord.
Ah, yes. Uh, Now, joining us is in the chat is Miss Guts. Hello, hello. Let me go ahead and update that desktop audio. Thank you, Miss Guts. And thank you for being the vehicle for my transition. This is going to be a very discussion based podcast. This is not going to be another simple pay per view breakdown. We will be talking a lot about theory. And if you want to have your opinion heard or your questions asked, please type it in and we will read it on air. Anyway, folks, before we settle into the topic, let's talk about some upcoming shows that we got in the pipe.
Super exciting.
We have 2 confirmed shows and 1 pending show.
Yes, which we should have confirmation of next week, hopefully.
And
Yes.
in fact, the 3 of us will be playing a hand in these shows.
Yeah.
Our first confirmed show will be CWF Die Harder, the sequel to Daikon, but unlike the sequel to Die Hard, will probably be just as good or maybe even better.
So it's Daikon with a Vengeance.
Yeah, well, no. Oh, wait, you like With a Vengeance more than Die Hard?
It's as good as Die Hard, and they're both better than Die Hard 2.
You know, I liked 2 more than 3, but just because of that airplane wing fist fight.
Fair.
But yes, CWF, let me get the event page on. That shows how little I have memorized everything, but that also shows that our output is a lot more frequent, that it's harder for me to just keep in the back of my brain. Anyway, we got CWF Die Harder taking place at the UC Davis campus on April 11th. Time and actual specific room are to be determined. Now, this was a show that I will proudly admit that Jack helped spearhead.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, I suppose.
And the UC Davis, the Daikon team, have been nothing but sweethearts towards us. Their passion is infectious, and it's carried out to the entire team. And you know, typically as anime fans, we kind of write off college cons because you know they're small, but this event has a lot of heart.
A lot of heart, a lot of history behind it. It was a long-going convention that had to take a break for a couple of years, and this upcoming April is going to be the second of the resurrected Daikon. I can't say enough good things about the Daikon staff, both at the time of the show last year, where I was, just by virtue of getting there so early, the first point of contact for a lot of stuff. And then even when Daikon would show up at other conventions doing the sort of advertising and making people aware that Daikon was happening again this year, anytime the CWF team interacted with them has always been just the most pleasant. Can't say good enough about how good Daikon is. If you haven't competed in CWF and you feel like it's a little intimidating, a show like Daikon is really the place to get your start.
Yeah. I think what's really impressive about Daikon, the venue itself, is that UC Davis is not very traveler friendly. Like, you know, it's not near any major airports. You got to really drive out there. So the fact that they really care about this con when they could have easily phoned it in and had every excuse to phone it in really just shows how much they care about the scene.
Absolutely.
All right. Outside of Daikon, we just confirmed today Fanimania 7.
Yo, man, I'm so excited for this.
Fanimania 7.
You guys don't even know.
Which
I am so excited for
which
Fanimania 7.
we have been able to announce a whopping 3 months early.
Insane.
It's absolutely insane. The Fanime's panel team is nothing more. They are nothing more than a dream to us. They have promised us advanced seating to clear the room. The fact that they locked us in early, because before the earlier Fanimanias, we were at the mercy of like all the plans were just kind of in a holding pattern until we had the okay and go. Now we're just getting the goes like right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and when you run enough shows, that knowing that you're in is like 80% of the battle.
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, Fanime is the CWF WrestleMania. It is the show. So being able to go, all right, we're locked in now in February for Fanime. I'm super excited to see what is going to be pulled by various members of our team just because we have that much time to start planning and theorizing what we can get away with.
Yeah, if for those at home who are wondering how much the difference advanced planning could have, I want you to compare Fanimania 7 to Fanimania 6 and then see how buttery smooth the transition was from 6 to 7.
And like even 6 was so nice because we got so much in the way of advanced and room clearing. So it's going to be even better now that we have that locked in so much earlier.
Oh, my bad. Not my bad. Not 6 and 7. 6 and 5. 5 and 6. 6 and 5. 6 and 5. 5 was. Whoo! What you got?
It was my first one, and it was like not even as a competitor, just as like an attendee, and not only just like seeing it from the outside, but then like being a part of it next year. There were a lot of big differences.
I also want.
We were hot stepping on 5.
We were. Also, quick shout out to Alan Zomega, who has been creating all of our wonderful logos and has done the wonderful Fanimania 7 mock-up, where they actually spruced up the original WrestleMania logo. They said, "Hey, can I spruce it up a bit?" I went, "Yeah, go." I'm a firm believer if somebody feels strongly about something, to let them do it, because they'll probably like knock something out of the park beyond like my initial scope, and that's how I choose to help lead the team here. And it's that philosophy has yet to bite me in the ass. But
it's a good philosophy.
Anyway, we got Fanimania 7 confirmed. We have Daikon confirmed, and our pending show we're still waiting for is CWF Sakura Rumble 2020, which is at SakuraCon. Reagan has been spearheading that. I like saying that phrase a lot, spearheading.
Yeah.
Reagan is taking over, and we're still waiting. We have every inclination to come back and do it, and we have showed SakuraCon the numbers, but ultimately they have the power. So for those who are going to SakuraCon and want us, please contact them through social media, because we are ready to bring the Rumble, the Sakura Rumble.
Yes.
So excited for it.
And let them know that you want us there. They're going to Sakura's apparent modus operandi is they announce all of their panel selections at the beginning of March, which is why we haven't heard anything as of yet. But no one else has either.
Yeah, which is understandable. Like, this is not us going like, how dare they make us wait. I mean, they are in a different state, and they do things differently, and fortunately we can. We don't need as much prep for SakuraCon just because it's not as big of a show. And the three of us will be split across those two shows that weekend, Daikon and SakuraCon.
And depending on how things are scheduled, you might see me at both.
Might.
Ian, please, Ian, your body.
I mean, if Sakura Rumble's on Sunday, I can make that justifiably.
Anyway, let's go to today's topic. Today's a special topic. We're not talking about NXT, which was an amazing show, hot damn, but we are talking about gimmicks in wrestling. And oh boy, I love talking about some gimmicks. Jack, Ian, for those who are not in the know, can you explain to them what a gimmick is?
Who wants to go first?
Ian, why don't you lay it on? Because I need to look up the lyrics to the song "You Gotta Get a Gimmick" from the musical Gypsy real quick.
All right, go for it. So a gimmick is like, in a sense, it's a character. It's an added thing to a wrestler in order to make them something else. It's something for them to lean on sometimes. And it could be anything. Like, for instance, Repo Man was a gimmick. He was literally a guy that would repossess things, but he actually wasn't that in real life. The novel definition of it is a trick or device intended to attract attention, publicity, or business.
Yeah, so usually gimmicks either extend to full characters like the Repo Man, or they could even extend to just simple props like Hacksaw Jim Dungan would always carry around a 2x4,
or even just like a phrase, or just like some small thing. Like, for instance, Big E, back when he was in NXT, he had the 5-count gimmick for a while.
Oh, I love that 5-count gimmick.
I wish they would bring it back. It's so good. It's so stupid.
They did kind of do that when the New Day, they were doing a countdown and they were counting down from 10, and then when they got to 5, Big E's like 5, 5,
5, 5.
Jack,
that's literally one of my favorite gimmicks, for specifically just the promo between him and Damian Sandow, where he goes through that elaborate sequence of mathematics in order to get him to 5, and then just starts screaming 5 in his face.
Jack, would you like to add anything to the gimmick conversation? I'm echoing.
Yeah, but in the world of wrestling, really, your gimmick is every aspect of your performance that relates back to your character. Like, your character is your gimmick. So it's even, catchphrases, gestures. Every wrestler does one of those things, and that's the cue for, oh, here comes the dope move. Your dope moves are part of your gimmick. And we can talk about it a little later. I have a specific example about move choice being part of a gimmick. For the local Northern California wrestling, one of my favorite wrestlers here in NorCal has the greatest gimmick of all time, and that ties into it. Everything you do in the ring, ostensibly, should be in service of your character and therefore your gimmick. How bold your gimmick is can vary, but at the end of the day, there are performing arts that are subtle and take a very deft hand to do, and wrestling isn't one of them. So really, the bigger and bolder your gimmick is, the better.
And
you go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to add that I think you really hit the nail on the head, where when people think of gimmicks, they really think of the 80s style gimmicks, Repo Man, Taker, Rick Rude, when in reality, gimmick is more of kind of a spectrum. It's not really if you have a gimmick or not. Everyone has a gimmick. It's just how much that gimmick is expressed.
Yeah, you know who doesn't have gimmicks? People who are still training to be pro wrestlers. And that can be why seeing very novice pro wrestlers work can not be as entertaining, because your actions don't gesture to a character. And pro wrestling is a performance art, as that masquerades as combat sport. It's not a combat sport. So you can be as physically capable as possible. You can execute the most amazing in-ring whatever. Uh, but without it gesturing back to character, you're not really doing anything. It just so happens that sometimes your character is, look at me, I can be on the top rope and then flip 8 times.
Yeah.
Can you? I need to step out real quick, but while I do, don't worry, it's okay. Why don't you just share to the rest of the listeners your favorite gimmicks?
Okay. While you're stepping out, I can go ahead and explain the beauty that is Brutal Rob Hands. If Ian doesn't mind me taking the spearhead a little bit here.
Go first. Go first.
Okay. So as I mentioned about move choice, and my favorite, one of my favorite NorCal wrestlers, just from a character standpoint, and also one of the most pleasant people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, even being super tangential to the actual work of these pro wrestlers of these shows, is Brutal Rob Hands. So there are classes of moves in pro wrestling. You have like high flying moves and technical grappling and mat based moves, and then you have big guy stuff where you'd see dudes like Rusev or The Big Show do. You have the choke slams, you have the big clotheslines, you have someone bouncing off the ropes into you and they bounce off you because you are 85 feet tall and 8 billion pounds heavy. Now, Rob Hands is about my height, so 5'10", 5'9". He is not a super built dude. Guts in the check and correct me if I get this wrong. He's billed at 6'8" and 313 pounds.
Okay.
And within the wrestling match, that is a true thing. So when he comes out to the ring, he steps over the top rope to get into the ring. He does it by stepping onto the bottom rope and then stepping over. But he choke slams dudes.
Okay.
And he wrestles dudes who would do big guy stuff.
Okay.
And so when someone bounces off the ropes and into him, they fall over. Your brain is saying that shouldn't happen. But the choreography of it works so well that your suspension of disbelief is removed. And there are 2 ways to have a good match with Rob Hands. 6'7", not 6'8", but I got the weight right, which is good. The 2 ways to have a good match with Rob Hands. One is you also are buying it entirely. So, like, when he steps in the ring, the opposing wrestler will go, like, look up to look at him, even though obviously he is below their line of sight. They will work his legs because that's how you work a larger wrestler. You go at their legs like a tree. You don't try to pick him up because you can't pick up a 6'7" dude who weighs 313 pounds. The other way that you can do it that works is that you get confused when Rob Hands gets announced because that dude isn't 6'7". There's no way that dude is 313 pounds. So I'm just going to bounce off the ropes and take him down. Why am I on my back? Okay, I'm going to pick this dude up. And they'll grab him for a real full body slam and go, "Arr!" And no one's getting off the ground. 2 or 3 times trying to pull him up and just let go. It's like, oh no, I pulled something in my back. What is going on?
I'm looking at a picture of this guy and it's just great. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. It's hilarious.
It's great because his entire thing is like, yo, this is how a big wrestler gimmick would gear himself, but he's not that big. And then he like picks you up for a choke slam, and you're like, what's happening? Why am I being choke slammed by this smaller person? How did he clothesline me into the ground? It is some of the most fun matches I have had the luxury of seeing live. Rob Hands has made happen. It's extremely good when they manage to match him up with someone who's legitimately a very, very large competitor, because Rob Hands has worked very hard to make all of the moves very believable. And so watching him and a guy who's legitimately 6'5" trying to chokeslam each other is it is a pleasure to be in Northern California, where I can see matches like this live, is what I'm going to say. And then, of course, there are, gimmicks that I've only been able to see on TV or online. Chikara is just chock full of my preferred method of gimmick, which is over the top to the old territory 80s style and beyond. Sort of hot nonsense. Special shout outs to A Still Life with Apricots and Pears, who is, I believe, currently still the most decorated non-binary wrestler in the American indie scene. Whose gimmick is that they are legitimately a piece of art. They live in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and they are checked out for exhibition at various locations.
Oh my god, that is amazing.
Yeah, I got lucky enough to see them perform in Oakland at at a Pride show last year. And they're going to be at Effie's Big Gay Brunch along with like every other LGBT wrestler in history. So look forward to that popping off during WrestleMania weekend. If you're looking for something not corporate to watch, I don't know if it's going to be streaming, but I bet it's going to be available post. They're tagging with another excellent non-binary wrestler called Sophie King. Their tag team name is just Them. Because they are both non-binary, but also a team, so it's Them with an exclamation point.
I'm gonna start with a goofy gimmick because I gotta do one of each. I love Orange Cassidy.
God,
I love Orange Cassidy so much. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care if they don't think comedy belongs in wrestling. He is a riot. He is so much fun. His segments on Being the Elite are just amazing. He is everything wrestling needs to accept that it has within it. And
absolutely.
he's just fantastic. If you don't know who Orange Cassidy is, he's this guy who dresses up in completely normal clothes, wears shades, and is the most lethargic wrestler you've ever seen. His kicks are just him like tapping the sides of people's legs with his boots. He puts in no effort, and he is, of course, 100% freshly squeezed.
And that just goes to show Orange Cassidy is probably a better technical wrestler than your favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, when Orange Cassidy will go to the top rope and jump out of the ring into a bunch of people fighting outside the ring, he does it in the most limp sort of, I guess I've made myself vertical. The horizontal now.
Yeah.
I'm going to flop into you. Yo, that is dangerous as hell.
Yeah, and like the cool thing about like all of that is by the way, he puts his hands in his pocket when he does that stuff.
Snap! You were talking about Orange Cassidy. This is perfect.
Yes, we were talking about Orange Cassidy being.
I hate suicide dives.
Same.
I think they're unnecessary and I wish they would go away. But if there's one person who does a quote unquote suicide dive or tope suicida, whichever language you prefer, that I don't mind, it's Cassidy because of the way he jumps over the top rope or the way he jumps through the middle ropes, because he doesn't jump through head first. He turns his body sideways and then lands on you with his back.
But you look at him jumping on the top rope with his hands in his pockets and just kind of lazily. And if you know anything about the mechanics of how wrestling works,
or
that is
physics.
Like I said, we repeat each other. You know that everything that allows you to sort of course correct when things go wrong, he is specifically in removing his ability to do.
It's a trust fall.
Yeah, it
essentially what
is, and get just the amount of height he gets with his hands in his pockets, lazily jumping off the top rope is insane.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to go, oh, what a simple thing to do is just to not wrestle and pretend to wrestle and make this stuff look easy. You know what the hardest thing in the world to do is? Make something that is very legitimately difficult look so easy that it's like you're not trying.
Yeah.
It,
So
that
I love him.
So I'm very happy that you brought up Orange Cassidy because I think we're in a very interesting phase of how gimmicks are expressed because I think a lot of more casual wrestling viewers when you think of gimmicks, you think of the more in your face people. And then we've kind of started phasing out a lot of ring names, and we're going on the classic first name last name moniker, like a really flashy first name moniker. And you know, originally what drew me into old NXT was Tyler Breeze, and
ooh, yeah, me too.
was Tyler Breeze. I went, oh my god, gimmicks are here. We had Tyler. It was the year of Tyler Breeze, Lucha Dragons, because Luchador is always a gimmick, in America at least. The Vaudevillains.
The Vaudevillains were good back when they were on NXT.
Vaudevillains, and Finn Balor was making his debut, but now that I've been in the wrestling fandom and have immersed myself in what makes a good match, gimmicks were always there.
Yep.
We never stopped having gimmicks.
No.
Nope.
And even when people who quote unquote are just themselves and are regular wrestlers, they have a gimmick. Adam Page, Pac, those are gimmicks. The Bastard.
Yeah, like if you didn't have a gimmick, you wouldn't have a wrestling name.
No. Sammy Guevara is a great example of he is a walking, talking gimmick on AEW because if you ever watch any of his vlog videos, he's definitely putting up 100% up front. The character you see on TV during Dynamite and Dark is not who he is in real life. He is actually a genuinely nice guy. And just the stuff on Being the Elite and those programs, they make him look like a dick because he's a bad guy. He's supposed to be a dick. Now, I'm not going to say that about MJF because MJF is a dick. I mean,
MJF.
That's like he lives his kayfabe. He lives it. But my favorite serious gimmick that I've seen still to like this day that went over the top and was looking for something and got it was the Straight Edge Society.
Wow.
I love the Straight Edge. Like I love the Second City Saint, as he was called, like when he was the voice of the voiceless and stuff. And I love Face Punk, but like the Straight Edge Society is actually, like, looking back on it, one of the best gimmicks that CM Punk ran himself through because he did everything he wanted with that gimmick. He literally walked into Vince McMahon's office, wrote down 6 months worth of TV, chucked it on his desk, and was all like, I don't know what you want me to do, but that's what I'm doing for the next 6 months. And Vince was all like, sure. And then it started to gain traction. Like, it's such an interesting gimmick because it's playing to like that portion of the audience that would instantly get on him for being like, you're an idiot for drinking drugs and smoking, which I'm not going to say anybody is, but like that's literally what he was doing the whole time. He had a woman spit in his face and call him the Antichrist at a house show.
No,
and he was excited about it.
That's good. But Jack, I wanted to go back to what you said. In essence, in order to be wrestling without a gimmick is just to not be a pro wrestler.
Yeah, it everything about pro wrestling is constructed,
Mhm.
which is, of course, to cut off, but no one who's going to listen to this podcast would ever think, but still needs to be addressed, does not mean it's fake. And
It's
even
predetermined.
then, fake is a word that can be applied to a lot of things, like
Agreed.
justice, love, truth.
Agreed.
That doesn't mean those things aren't real, and so it is with wrestling. Uh, yeah, man, the heavy stuff now. Uh-huh.
Wrestling's a concept.
I I
So,
personally don't like using the word fake because it totally hand waves the legitimate risk that goes on in each match.
yeah, absolutely, especially recently where we have had performers sadly pass due to um, unpreventable incidents in the ring recently,
Mhm.
semi recently.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, La Parka.
Yep.
yeah,
Rest in
it
peace.
is disrespectful to the extreme. But like I said, people who care about the CWF enough to listen to this podcast, I fully believe, are I don't need to preach to the choir about that. They are already in the idea that wrestling's real.
It
Uh,
is real. Uh, were you there when Jeremy's wrestling trainer gave us the greatest moniker to describe the CWF?
I don't believe
Because
so.
I used to
I
call
wasn't.
us, I used to say that we're whose line it is it anyway, presented as a WWE pay per view, and I thought
Right.
like that's it, that's it, that's the money.
Hmm.
He beat me. He beat me to the punch.
Mhm.
He calls it we are the air guitar of pro wrestling.
That's really good. Do you happen to remember? Because I don't know who Jeremy's been training with. Uh,
Ah,
Mostly because it's just never come up in conversation.
I forgot too, but he helps train Jeremy and Alex and a few others in the team that we will keep quiet. But uh,
Of course.
once,
So it would be someone closer to the SoCal side,
yeah,
so I probably would not have met them.
yeah, definitely closer to the SoCal side. But I think just putting it like there, because you know, air guitar, it's easy to dismiss it as fake, but there's a lot of skill to do a compelling air guitar routine.
Yes.
But I wanted to go back to the concept of gimmicks because one thing that I've noticed when watching wrestling nowadays, now this could either be me having a better appreciation for it or just that the art form has progressed in this way. But I remember back in the day, like this was my biggest pet peeve of a wrestler with a gimmick is they come in and they look larger than life. They got this really distinct gimmick and then they get in the ring and they're doing a basic wrestling match.
Mm.
And the gimmick is just discarded. Which is why I think Undertaker really stood out because he carried that dead man gimmick not only at the entrance but midway and it was expressed outside in addition to his signatures and his taunt spots. But I say this now just because a lot the wrestlers they're really good at keeping the gimmick from beginning to end and weaving the gimmick with the wrestler's psychology.
Yep.
Mhm. I think it's a little column A, little column B. I think that it's always been a bit of a problem with the as much as wrestling has been mainstream, because it's never really been that mainstream since, you know, people thought Hulk Hogan was a good person to look at. Uh, it's the more mainstream sources of wrestling kind of had what I would call a house style for how they operated a match.
Mhm.
Okay.
Uh, and you would sort of, unless you were a very specific exception, you were kind of going to be working a match in the house style. And WWE still kind of has this problem even today. But like WWE and WCW kind of defaulted to that, especially in the time where gimmicks were sort of seen shamefully. Like, we didn't want to have big or interesting gimmicks. We just wanted to have a bunch of dudes with various dull names and the implication of a gimmick.
First name, last name.
WCW, yeah, first name, last names.
First name, last name.
Was especially a problem in WWFE in the mid 2000s and even in the early 2000s, even though you had a lot of breakaway stuff from that. Look up Dwayne The Rock Johnson before he became Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
You mean Rocky Maivia?
Yeah, Rocky Maivia. Watch some of his stuff and realize that part of the reason why the Rock persona and the Rock gimmick worked is because people legitimately hated him that much. And then being able to pivot with that.
Yep.
I think in more of the independent scene, you had the ability and the necessity to keep your gimmick going, because you can't rely on people knowing who you are when you're doing a bunch of, shows just for people who may have never seen you before. You have to get that gimmick through all the way so that people have something to latch on to either cheer or boo you.
That's actually a very good point. Because I think if we're going to talk about an independent wrestler whose gimmick has been so well known that it kind of like broke into mainstream, I think you know who I'm thinking of. Joey Ryan.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The penis
100%.
suplex.
Excuse me, the Pornhubplex.
The Pornhubplex. The Pornhubplex. It is like that thing hit the internet hard. Just because
Yes.
no one's gonna remember Joey Ryan the name, but they're gonna be like, "Hey, you want to see this video of this guy who threw another dude with his penis?" You're gonna remember that.
And that's another reason why I think even in like the WWE, we have more like focus on gimmick and character, is because of the rise of social media and that sort of new stream of recognition for performers. And I think another reason why is like we bringing people into from the indies. We're seeing now, especially very recently with NXT, they no longer feel a need to have to repackage or change them because it's detrimental. You don't want to lose the built-in fan base that these performers are bringing in, which was not a thing that you could even consider not even 5 years ago. Well, 5 maybe at the very cusp, but like 10 years ago, who gives a damn if you change up your gimmick when you are now on TV, the place where people who watch wrestling can now see you? But nowadays, you have value just by bringing your current built gimmick and its installed fan base with you to the new product. There was an interview in an issue of Sports Illustrated, or maybe it was just on their website, with Killer Cross, who worked mostly in SoCal and was recently signed to WWE, talking about doing the work and building up that social media presence makes him a more attractive commodity to the big wrestling businesses who sign the big contracts. You're more appealing to WWE and AEW and the Japanese promotions and like Impact to a lesser degree if you have an installed fan base. And that is to the subject of gimmicks, good for gimmicks. Good for people who have built their own gimmicks for things they're interested in and care about, to survive the transition to a bigger stage. Whereas beforehand, you would be given something. Let's never forget that in another timeline, Rusev would be a genie.
Let's
We
also
would be talking about Genie Rusev right now, because that was Dusty Rhodes' original
I
idea.
want that. I want.
Original idea of the
want that.
Rusev
I do.
was that his manager would come out with a lamp and Rusev would have MC Hammer pants
No,
and
I
wrestle
don't
in
want
that?
that.
Yes.
Maybe in the
Yeah.
80s I wanted that. I don't want
Okay.
that.
Oh,
Correction. I want that right now, which is why everybody should go watch more Chikara.
more an easier objectionable example is in another universe we wouldn't have Stone Cold Steve Austin, we'd have the Ringmaster.
We'd have the Ringmaster.
We'd still have Ringmaster.
We'd still have Ringmaster. And I think it's smart business not to want to repackage the wrestler, because you gotta build up from something from scratch when you could just take what they got famous over and just make it good. And a great example of what Jack's been talking about a wrestler who just pretty much had a one-to-one transition, but just with a bigger audience, is Shotzi Blackheart.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, Rachel said that 3 years ago, Shotzi Blackheart would have been unrecognizable upon being signed and debuting. Not only did she keep her name, she has the same gear, she has the same nickname, she wrestles a similar style, but just at a different pace. It's Shotzi, just now on the
They
big
let her
screen.
keep her tank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what also is really great about Gimmicks is that you see this with Chris Jericho. Is not everybody can be a Ricochet, or be the big guy who does little guy moves. And a gimmick allows yourself to be memorable while also protecting your body.
Yes. I talked earlier, I think you had stepped away entirely for this conversation, G, about Brutal Rob Hands, who's a NorCal performer, whose entire gimmick is being not very big, but doing big guy stuff. And the gimmick, because there's only so many big guy stuff moves.
Choke slam,
Choke
splash.
slam, big clotheslines, splashes, never going up on the top rope. Threatening to go up to the top rope and then not going up to the top rope.
Chest slaps.
Iron Claw.
Letting people run into you and then bouncing off because they're so big.
Oh, that's great.
They're all great moves, but we've named 7.
And they're most of them in the Big Show's repertoire.
Well, they're most of them in every big guy's repertoire.
True. And to be fair,
which is why a gimmick is important, is because if you're a big guy and your ability is doing big guy stuff is dope. People will pop for big guy stuff every time. When you pick someone up and then just do a couple reps lifting them up and down and then just throwing them over your shoulder, that's dope.
Jeff Cobb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of a guy who's not super big but does big guy stuff because he's just a wall of muscle. Good lord. But it's very repetitive. That's where your gimmick comes in. That's where the rest of your aspects of your gimmick comes in. Because your big guy stuff moves are part of your gimmick, of course. But Big Show doing big guy stuff and, The Undertaker or Kane doing big guy stuff, that's 3 different ways that, a big guy stuff, happens. When Big Show does, big guy stuff, you're like, wow, look at that ultimate power of this dude who's the size of 3 dudes. But when The Undertaker does big guy stuff, it's like, it's the dead man. Oh, geez.
He's using magic.
Yeah. Or he's using the amazing power of the Harley-Davidson motorcycle.
and
during the nadir of gimmicks. Where gimmicks that were fun and interesting were sent off to die in a field of first name, last names, where you even took The Undertaker and made him into a first name, last name style gimmick.
The American Badass.
Yes. Yeah. And Kane, when he chokeslams someone, you're like, he is putting that person directly to hell.
That was in my brain. That was in my brain.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Do not go to purgatory. You have been slammed to hell, literally.
And not only did he, the way he prepped his chokeslam was he used the fact that he wore gloves and he would kind of tighten the glove that just made it just more unsettling. Because now you imagine this big leather mass around your neck, which adds a level of uncomfort to gravity.
Yes.
And he would pick people up.
Yeah.
Like,
and like when
Undertaker picked people up, but like out of all of them, between the three of them, Kane picked people up.
yeah, you were going to get your like leg exercise in if you were doing a match with Kane, because you were going to be really high to make that choke slam. Because yeah, that arm was going to be just a vertical line.
Yep.
And to a more comedic extent, Rob Hands also has his choke slam indicator for his finisher, which is the announcement that unfortunately has come to this kid, but now I'm gonna have to goozle you. I don't know what that means. No one knows what that means. But apparently, to get goozled is to be chokeslammed by the brutal Rob Hand. So it's the ability to a good, well-developed gimmick allows you to separate yourself from other wrestlers who wrestle in a similar way.
The same
Without
thing,
having to go nuts with your actual moves. Unless your gimmick is, I go nuts with my actual moves,
Keith
which
Lee.
is also a legitimate
Keith Lee.
gimmick.
Keith Lee.
Dominic Dijakovic.
Dominic Dijakovic, Keith Lee.
And I mean, the same thing is said for like us as performers as a part of the CWF. All of our characters have gimmicks. We're not just playing a character, we're playing a character with a gimmick.
And
like Present Mike is a radio host and uses DJ talk throughout all
that was
of their promo.
I remember that was our big breakthrough with AJ when they were developing Present Mike, because we were all focusing on just what Present Mike did in the canon, and then I kind of stepped back. I was like, wait, Present Mike's a radio host. We should be using a lot of DJ slang. And
and
it really helped out.
But
like just to talk about who's here talking. Ian, speaking of living the gimmick, dedicated more time outside the actual performance spaces of shows, developing and getting over his gimmick of what if Jigglypuff was also part of the Straight Edge Society. Which it is. That's your gimmick, is Jigglypuff plus this other thing. But because you are so dedicated on Twitter, on our other social media, on building things up before shows in a way that a lot of the other performers, myself included, don't. We don't do that level of work with our gimmicks.
Which is okay for anybody looking to
get in.
Let
me rephrase. It's not a bad thing that we don't. It's just something that Ian does that I don't want to assume anything motivation wise, but I don't think you would be having as much fun being CM Puff without that external work of building up to stuff like building up to Daikon. You've been doing a lot on social media building up to Daikon.
And I have a promo or 2 videos to film and put up because I want to build things even more.
Now,
exactly.
Now let's join the two worlds together with the two topics, because as Jack said, gimmicks allow people who inhabit a similar performance space, i.e. big guys, to differentiate themselves. And you can see in the CWF, a gimmick is even more critical because we don't have the physical element to differentiate ourselves. We only have the promo. So it's really cool how there is 2 layers of a CWF gimmick. There is the initial character, like, I want to be Present Mike. Bam. Already you're differentiating yourself from everyone else, because we don't have a Present Mike, we don't have a Moomin Rider, we don't have a Sailor Moon. But it's usually, from more pro wrestling savvy people, it's, I'm bringing X as Y. Mario mixed with Ted DiBiase. Jigglypuff with CM Puff Matt Ishida with The Miz.
Mr. Rossetti with
Dusty
only the
Rhodes.
part of Dusty Rhodes that delivered the Hard Times Pro,
Yeah,
which is
no,
something I would like to speak on a little bit. After we've done discussing this
Oh
topic.
no! I
If you
think
want me to
this
go
is,
ahead now.
yeah, this is a good transition.
yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
So if you haven't been aware, I haven't made this super aware to the whole CWF universe. My performance as Mr. Rossetti took me a bit by surprise at its success, and how it has a natural pivot to it from what I was originally going to be, which was I wanted to play Mr. Rossetti as a heel. But then it turns out when I'm sort of in a rock and a hard place, I default to sort of making a good gimmick to start with is yourself, but more so. So suddenly Mr. Rossetti is very, very angry about class and has probably read a bit too much Engels. So it's communist Mr. Rossetti.
The working class.
The working class Mr. Rossetti, like literally up there girls with a pickaxe and a hard hat.
And dirt on your
And
face.
then I realized the next show I'm going to be able to perform at is going to be in soccer. It was going to be in April. And new Animal Crossing drops in March. And a pivotal part of the Mr. Rossetti promo I delivered, and the reason I was able to bring Hard Times into it, was that part of the announcement blitz for Animal Crossing was that Mr. Rossetti was fired. Mr. Rossetti no longer had a job because you don't need people being yelled at to reset when we're on a handheld console like the Switch that has an autosave and cloud saving. So I was like, okay, Mr. Rossetti doesn't have a job and he's pissed. That was my first fundamental jump for the character. And then I'm like, oh no. One, this character's successful. I want to bring him back. Two, what if the material I'm drawing from cuts me off at the knee? What if they announce that Mr. Rossetti is in the new Animal Crossing and he's the guy you go to like pay actual US dollars for a new hat or bells? Like, what if he is the DLC vendor? What if he is made even more like, haha, capitalism? The reverse of my character, who is, haha, capitalism sucks, like Tom Nook does.
I want to bring attention that funny enough, this situation that Jack's in is actually very common to a lot of our performers when
Yes.
a new movie or adaptation comes out shortly before a performance. Because this right here is what kneecapped Star-Lord.
Oh yeah, no, this
Well,
hardcore. Well, I mean, it more kneecapped the people that went on before him, the Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Black Falcon.
I think I see Star-Lord as like the pinnacle of what happened because Reagan wanted to walk in playing X, but the crowd was not having it because Infinity War debuted shortly before Fanime.
Yeah, it did. And Reagan did a wonderful job pivoting basically on the spot.
Right. But I wanted to just give viewers the context of what Jack is talking about because a lot of our characters keep coming out, and every time in the team when it says like reboot of X comes out or new season of Y comes out, whoever's doing a character followed as like, oh fuck, please don't fuck me up, please don't fuck me up.
Yeah, it's a legitimate worry for a lot of people. And I think the only people who would be immune to that in our current roster, it's probably only Mario.
Skeletor.
Like,
no, not Skeletor. There's going to be a new He-Man coming out.
Yeah, I still don't see them like changing that character though.
Well, here's the thing. What I mean by that is like, imagine a world where they change Skeletor up and in such a way that Skeletor is not performable as the weird, goofy, "Nyeh, I am a villain" in the 80s cartoon way. Like, if Skeletor suddenly has a backstory of there used to be a planet, then Skeletor showed up and personally murdered everyone on that planet because it's being written by. That's neither here nor there. Like, if they decide to go hyper grimdark Skeletor,
Mhm.
that's not going to prevent Skeletor from working. That is going to inhibit and have to be worked around. The
Okay,
reason I
understood.
say Mario is that Mario has been built up purposefully by the performer to be a character so far divorced from anything in the actual canon of Nintendo's video game character Mario that it's its own CWF Mario. So, like, whatever happens outside of that doesn't matter because Mario is so entrenched in the CWF and is such a consistent, Mario plus Ted DiBiase.
It also
That
helps that Jeremy's Mario is literally I'm the Mario that does all of this. So when you just add in a new iteration of Mario, he just treats it as another accomplishment and is still on his merry way.
exactly. But if like Nintendo declared from here on out that Mario does not do violence, Mario has sworn an oath of pacifism and will never raise fist against another living being. CWF Mario does not care that has happened. There could be 8 video games of Mario seeking peaceful resolution to all of the problems of the Mushroom Kingdom.
Yo,
And no one's going to care that CWF Mario is going to take a chair to somebody because it's CWF's Mario.
Yep.
And I don't think we have, because a lot of our other performers love branching out and doing a bunch of different characters. I don't know that we have a character that established,
we have one.
except for Matt Ishida.
It's Matt Ishida, who is so.
It's Matt Ishida, who for the longest time before I joined the crew, and I was just a fan of CWF, never associated with Digimon. And this is not something that it's not only a me problem. It's a recurring thing. Like, Matt Ishida's from something. I thought he was just a jackass.
But I think Matt Ishida has a lot of the traits that Mario says, is that he's been around so long, and his iteration is so far removed from his canon. They don't see him as Matt Ishida Digimon character. They see Matt Ishida, that fucking jackass. I hate him.
Yeah.
Oh man. But this is how gimmicks change. And back to Rossetti, like, so you're in this situation where you think your gimmick might be kneecapped. Where do you go, Jack?
I go, oh man, this was a super dope gimmick to do. But if Mr. Rossetti's in this game is as a capitalist pig dog, I don't think I can pick. I'm not interested in portraying that Rossetti. I'm not interested in being the, like, authority money figure character. It's just not a thing I like to be. Whether I'm playing a face or a heel, there's always got to be that little element of me in there. Thankfully, the Nintendo Animal Crossing Direct dropped, and it looks like Mr. Rossetti is doing a basically there's a feature in the game where if you get stuck on geometry or can't get out from where you put yourself, you can call a rescue copter, and it has the Rossetti music, and it sounds like Rossetti's voice blips when they call it up. So that's something I can easily just incorporate in the current gimmick. It would feel weird and bad to do a full 180 in my case. Other times, and other characters would probably work better if that happened. But so much of the idea of Rossetti was. Sorry, my headphones just died there. Was built up to be. His entire promo are about not changing, not resetting, not undoing mistakes. That then suddenly going, yeah, now I take your real money and you get fake money for idiots. you idiots. See, I'm really bad at this. Would be a betrayal of what I felt was the core of the character I built up. So what would have happened is I would not perform Rossetti again. And that would kind of suck because Rossetti did really well. And I had a lot of fun, and people had a lot of fun watching me be Rossetti. But that's not going to be a problem.
It's the nature of the beast whenever we adapt work. And
Oh, absolutely.
part of it is us trying to stay on top of the adaptation because, a legitimate strategy to when it comes to certain updates of your character is to just ignore it. Like if a movie came out and your character died in it, like you can't just go I died and roll over there. But at the same time, you ask it like if the property becomes the update becomes so ubiquitous, to ignore it is almost to deny reality in a sense. Like
And if it's so ubiquitous, people won't let you ignore it. Like we mentioned with Star-Lord and with the team of Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Falcon. No one in that Fanime crowd was going to let them not talk about Infinity War. You were going to have to address that, or you were going to get buried under the audience.
And this is actually a really good time for us to talk about what Isaac had to go through when he was preparing All Might.
Ooh, yeah.
And Jack, you were there during the formative years of All Might, where Isaac as a performer really prides himself on his individuality.
Yeah.
This is my version of the character. Completely cool. We all want us as creators. We're all egotists. We want an element in the character that we point to and go, "That's me."
Yeah.
Right.
Or else, why bother?
Or else, why bother? Oh, I mean, some of us like to be perfect carbon copies. Reagan.
Oh, I would say that Reagan brings a lot of Reagan into his characters.
He just picks all the characters right. And
he picks characters that he fits into well, which is another topic that maybe we should talk about later.
I agree with that.
But with Isaac, he kept fighting all the All Might mannerisms. He's all, I don't want to do that. Everyone expects it. It's a cop out. Everybody knows it. So he spent at least 2 to 3 shows not doing the All Mightism. He wouldn't say I am here as much. He was kind of like a quieter, more intense character. He didn't use a lot of the catchphrases, and he did well. But there was definitely his stuff felt like it was missing. It was a good dish that didn't have any seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And during a pro wrestling training session with Donovan just straight up told Isaac, "Hey, that stuff's there. That's what the people want. Don't fight it. Use it."
There's an allegory that I picked up actually. If anyone's actually interested in more of the theory of pro wrestling, Mike Quackenbush, who is basically the promoter who runs Chikara and their Wrestle Factory training facility, has been doing a bunch of videos for a series called Till We Make It. There's like 100 of them now. One of them was talking about audience expectation for performers, and I think this applies to us even more because we come in with a pre-built expectation from the audience. With Mike Quackenbush, he's talking about wrestling veterans who have built up a fan base over the years. We're coming in immediately with a fan base that we didn't build up, that we are attaching to and leaping off of. The allegory he used is going to see your favorite performer in live concert. And that the best kind of concert from live performers always it's never just the greatest hits, but there will always be the 1 or 2 songs. They may not be the most popular songs, but they're songs that everyone who's even a casual fan of the performer will know. It's not always super deep cuts and new material. And if it is, that concert isn't going to feel as good as an audience member as one where you go, I know that song. That's a good song and I like it and I'm glad it's being played here live for me. And I think that's the same way with incorporating elements of characters in. You don't want to you can't just hit all the catchphrases and that's it. That's your problem. Because there's not enough material in the world to cover what we need to cover in a performance at CWF.
In fact, that's kind of like one of our number one tips is like don't give us the Wikipedia. Kevin says don't be a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, don't be the TV tropes page of your character for several reasons. Don't be a TV tropes anything. That's your Jack sponsored tip for the day. Don't be a TV trope anything. The more you know about not being or engaging with TV tropes. But that's exactly it, is because the appeal of CWF is seeing characters that you recognize in situations they do not exist in.
Damn,
or
I couldn't
seeing
have said
characters
that better than myself.
Or seeing characters that you don't know about interact with people that you do know about. Like, no one would care about Gavin Dubois and a bunch of other characters who are all original. People care when Gavin Dubois bullies Pikachu Libre, and then Pikachu Libre lays him out on his ass at the end of the show.
Another example is Chun-Li. There's a lot of fans who like Chun-Li, but watching Chun-Li face off against famous movie director Tommy Wiseau is a transcendent experience.
Yes, it's unique to this kind of performance that we have created. I feel like I've kind of wandered off a little bit from the topic and what it was originally, because I can't remember what it actually was, because I'm going to try to bring it back.
I got you. It's basically giving people a little bit of what they want. You can't just regurgitate the familiar, and you can't just be a new, different experiment every time. And the appeal of CWF is the familiar in unfamiliar situations.
Yes, like, just to bring it back to, Isaac's building up his All Might, is Donovan just said, you have so much material that's already out there. Not using it and just leaving it out there is just making so much more work for yourself. And there's a world where Isaac didn't take that advice and kept on keeping on with his interpretation of All Might. And it may well have been as successful as Isaac was with All Might when he incorporated that. But it would have taken a lot more work to get there, and there would have been no guarantee it would have gotten to the exact same heights.
I think I have some of this with Puff as well. Is like it really because I'm a Pokemon, because I'm Jigglypuff, and because I have to put a character on top of a character on top of a character
that doesn't talk.
Yeah, that normally doesn't talk. I have to portray something in a way that's going to make the audience want to care. And one of the ways that I've started to do that is formulating the idea that, like, well, I'm not restricted to any genre of music. Like, what you saw at Mag West, that whole, like, punk version of Jigglypuff, doesn't mean you're going to get that version of Jigglypuff at a future show. Like, the intensity will still be there, but I can adapt to any genre of music and use that to my advantage.
This is where Ian reveals that Fanime is going to be the revelation of second wave ska CM Puff.
I knew you were going to say ska.
I have something very, very special planned for Fanime.
There better be
not Puff related.
There better be checkered patterns all over you, you son of a bitch.
Maybe one day.
But
on the flip side,
Puff gonna make you drop that belt.
Because,
pick it up.
Because CM Puff didn't have a lot to immediately latch onto. It made the debut very rough because the crowd didn't know where to go.
It also didn't help that, like, while the outfit seemed like a good idea at the time, wearing a pink hoodie was a fucking death sentence, excuse my language.
No, it wasn't.
It was a bad idea because everybody for a while thought I was Little Mac.
Oh, that
Yeah.
part.
There
Okay.
was a bit of cost.
Okay.
Wearing the
invasion.
pink hoodie was a bad idea.
Yes, in terms of differentiating yourself.
Yeah. Now, the outfit we currently have is fantastic,
Yes,
and I love it.
I ran into the same problem. Speaking of a little bit to the beginning of the show, last Daikon, the first premiere of Gavin Dubois, was pretty garbage because I didn't give the audience immediacy to latch onto what I was doing. I did something that was a little too complicated for the premiere of an original character in CWF for an audience that may not have seen a lot in the way of CWF beforehand. Especially because I went on like first. There was a lot of missteps in that Daikon show personally, which makes it very gratifying that the rest of the show went off so well.
And oh god, I had a point. I wanted to talk about a similar story what happened to Ellie with Sailor Moon and how she resisted using the original Sailor Moon opening at first. And in comes Donovan. It's like, hey, you got this theme, you got this slamming theme that if you play it, the crowd's gonna go fucking ballistic. And she didn't. She left it on the table until last year. But that just goes to show like the wonderful tightrope that the CWF performer has to walk between maintaining what's authentic and their own creative spin while making sure everything makes sense. And if we, let's putting it back to wrestling, that's how a gimmick is. How do you make a personality of character make sense while also having a move set that expresses the character that A, you can do, and B, you can do safely. Because you can make up whatever gimmick on the spot, but executing it is a whole different story. You got to be able to have the physical chops to do it, or make a gimmick that overcomes those limitations.
Yes. Like, speaking of great gimmicks in wrestling and limitations, for a while, this is no longer true. And it brings my heart great joy that it is no longer true. For a not insignificant amount of time, The Miz was not what one would point to as an excellent performer of the art of wrestling moves. He was just not very good. Or he was good. I don't want to be too hard on The Miz, but especially at the beginning, he was not an excellent in-ring talent. But his dedication to gimmick covered for that for quite some time. And then, I don't know, 2015, maybe 2016, 2015, maybe 2014, everything just clicked into place. And then The Miz, who had been this great entertaining wrestler, who had this great gimmick, and had matches that happened. There's not really any Barnstormer early Miz matches.
Yeah, you were more interested on the outcome, so just tune in to see how it finishes, because you were more
and like how The Miz would talk about it before and after. Then he started, being extremely good, whether it was everything finally clicking into place, his like non-traditional entrance into pro wrestling, shifting out into him getting just enough experience, the last remnants of that unfortunate concussion that he had finally healing. The Miz just started being excellent on and off the mic. But for a while, we cared about The Miz because of what he did on the mic, what he did in the ring character-wise, not because he was going to give a legitimately interesting physical performance.
Right.
And he's not the only example. He's just the one that pops into my head most quickly because he went beyond that and is currently beyond just being someone who's using a gimmick to cover for less than immaculate ring skills.
By the way, you want to hear about an interesting gimmick that's happening in NXT UK right now?
Sure, I'm not watching any of the WWE products, so fill me in.
Chris Hero, Cassius Ohno.
Yes.
You know how he was billed as the knockout artist. That was the whole thing. He could like knock you out with his impressive array of strikes. In
Yes.
NXT UK, he is calling himself the best wrestler in the UK, and he refuses to use any strikes.
Oh boy. That's especially good if you have a background in British like wrestling from the 70s and 80s, which if you don't, consider looking up like Wide World of Sports Wrestling, because some of the people who then would go to Japan and change wrestling forever got their starts wrestling on British TV.
Dynamite Kid.
It's like the first Tiger Mask, all sorts of amazing wrestlers. But the British style of wrestling is not strike focused at all. It is all good grappling.
Isn't it a catch can? Isn't that the style?
Yeah, it is another reference to the style. Although catch can also refer to a actual combat sport wrestling style
I see.
that has roots in the British tradition. So that's where a lot of that's why the British style of pro wrestling has a lot of catch can influence. Unlike in the US, where we have a big boxing tradition in addition to back in the day a big catch wrestling tradition. So there are more strikes in the sports that pro wrestling was emulating. Not so much in the UK. On the like pleb level. Not to say there were no British boxers, but because like I don't want Doug Lee to cross counter me. But
Now that's a true British boxer.
absolutely.
But I gotta say though, while there is the the spectrum of gimmicks and how some people have it more subtle than others, I gotta say the 8-year-old in me pops for a ridiculous gimmick, like cartoony level of gimmick that is paired with good wrestling, which is why I love Tyler Breeze, and which is why everybody knows I absolutely adore anything the Velveteen Dream does.
Absolutely.
I
And
love the Velveteen Dream.
I know I keep saying watch Chikara. Watch Chikara because it shows not just these giant cartoony gimmicks. There was a wrestler who was a knight and another wrestler who was the same knight, but they had come forward in time with a minute in between them. So one of them was a disrespectful youth and the other was an old fogey. They had a winner, loser has to go back in time match. That's the level Chikara can operate on.
I know about the Archibald Peck time traveling saga.
Yeah. But also, it has Chikara's great strength is taking this like goofy, cartoony storylines and gimmicks, but also being able to deliver more subdued, intimate, and interesting storylines, even when we're dealing with these goofy ass characters. Like, there is an early storyline with Mike Quackenbush feuding with one of his students who is revealed that one of the big Rudo mass wrestlers is actually just someone who studied under Mike Quackenbush in kayfabe and was rejected and from years ago and had come back for vengeance. And so one of these dudes looks like the spirit of Halloween vomited all over.
wait, the spirit of Halloween or
Yeah, the store.
The
spirit of
store. Okay,
Halloween.
not like.
All
right, I thought we were
but
talking
it's
about the metaphysical
also-
sense.
Yeah, this is also the story of someone who just wants a teacher to recognize them and is doing repugnant things, but with the goal of basically saying, look at me, tell me I'm good.
Oh, that's a classic story. That is a classic story.
And that's dope.
Oh, I bet you it is. I I remember one of my favorite Shakara spots was I forgot the wrestler's name, but in the match he pulled out an invisible gun and he shot the opponent, but the referee took the bullet, and everybody just kind of has like this moment while the ref is being carried out on a stretcher, and it's really serious. Like the crowd and everybody on commentaries is treating it like the ref died. And then after the ref was midway down the map, one of the wrestlers goes, "Wait a minute, we can cheat," and they all resort to eye poking, hair pulling, biting, like the most juvenile 5th grade playground fight style ever. There were a few purple nurples thrown in.
And there have been multiple storylines with the colony that have been super investing about what does it mean to be part of a team as opposed to being an individual, and what do you give up of yourself to be on a team. But the colony is also a wrestling group that are made out of toyetic ant action figure people. They have names like Missile Assault Ant
and Soldier Ant.
So it's literally just a bunch of action figures, but also using this sort of heightened cartooniness to be able to do these stories in a way that's bearable to watch wrestling with. Because if it was just people doing this, eventually you'd be like, man, can we lighten up a little bit?
I think it's I think what the beauty is that we now have all these flavors of gimmick and these flavors of wrestling styles, and it's coming in because even the most serious of feds, when I think of serious wrestling fed, I think of New Japan. Even New Japan is loaded with gimmicks.
Well, I've never thought of New Japan as turbo serious because how many tiger masks have they had? Never forget that Jushin Thunder Liger exists because of an anime. It was being advertised.
You are right, but I consider them the more serious one because of how serious they view wrestling. The wrestlers aren't the wrestlers themselves, not all of them are serious, but dear God, it's this is life and death wrestling.
Yes. When I think about the super serious wrestling, I think about promotions that I don't think exist anymore. Does Dragon's Gate still do matches? Because boy howdy, that was some serious wrestlers doing wrestling. And it's dope if you like seeing people do dope moves, and also not caring who wins or loses matches because it's dull as hell.
Oh yeah, was it? Is it Ring of Honor? Aren't they trying to build themselves as super serious?
I don't know. Ring of Honor has done so many dumb, bad things that I actively try not to look at them. Great move, apparently bringing Enzo and Cass into as a surprise entrance to your wrestling matches during that whole thing,
and not telling your roster,
that you were bringing the second biggest douchebag in the history. No, Simon Gotch is less of a douchebag than Enzo. Gonna put it out there. Simon Gotch sucks, but not as much as Enzo.
You know what? I'm gonna agree with you. I didn't really particularly care for Simon Botch, as I like to call him during his WWE.
Whoa, even more than New Jack? Enzo never legitimately hurt anyone.
Well, Enzo never legitimately hurt anybody who was wrestling with Enzo. Let's leave it at that, because I don't want to go down this well.
Yeah,
honestly. I know I started us down this path, which is why I'm going to take the moment to call an audible, say I messed up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore.
It was one of the reasons why I didn't say his name when I was brought up old NXT.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But Gimmicks is God, I just love talking about them just because it allows us to talk about why we love a wrestler outside of they do a cool move or they said a cool thing.
There's a man that we haven't really mentioned that I think needs to be mentioned.
Are you gonna say the Fiend? Are you gonna say the
No, I am not. I am going to talk about the man of reinvention. The man that if you give him anything, he can make it a gimmick.
Chris Jericho?
Chris Jericho.
I said Chris Jericho.
but we didn't like talk about him in depth.
Oh,
That's true.
True.
We passed him by, but he deserves more than that.
Okay.
I mean, this is the guy who took scarves, fucking scarves. Again, apologies for language, and ran with it.
Let's
Well,
list the things that Jericho got over: a list, a plant, a scarf,
A jacket,
a jacket, a bottle of champagne.
the AEW title itself.
Chain steakhouses.
Yeah, chain steakhouses.
Oh, and a list of moves.
Oh, yeah, a list of moves.
The year 2000.
The year 2000. The phrase "stupid idiots."
Drink it in,
When was
man.
his gimmick that just fell apart because there was the weird conspiracy angle that they never pulled the trigger on, and yet he still made that work afterwards?
Oh, I don't even remember that one like fully, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. The Lion of Jericho, which is kind of weird for Chris Jericho, considering what that is in reference to, but
Also, the gift of Jericho.
the gift of Jericho. It's very interesting because all of these things that Jericho is great and we're reminiscing about, we say that he can do anything. I'm going to put it out here right now. Chris Jericho is not a good face. Chris Jericho is an outstanding heel in a variety of contexts. Chris Jericho as a face is just kind of a non-starter.
So the way I look at it is he's good as a face for a residual amount, or not residual, but like a very close window. And that's it.
His face period has his time. His face has the expiration length of a gallon of milk.
God,
that.
I don't know. I think the milk might last longer.
He's good. He's good as a face, in my opinion, from when he starts to about a month later. And I feel like most of the time it was possibly creative running out of things to do with him. I'd like to see him as a face in AEW just to see what that's like. I don't think
now.
it's going to happen. No, not now. I'm saying I'd like in the future, but I also don't think that's going to happen. But he's risen above the status of being a heel or a face. I mean, the crowd sings his theme song wherever he goes.
Yeah, part of that is that crowds like to sing anybody's theme song. By the way, when our podcast does about wrestling pet peeves, have me on so I can talk about how much I'm a curmudgeon and hate people singing along with theme songs.
Are you also the type of people who don't like others singing along at concerts?
Okay, listen, a concert is one thing. We're all here for music. I'm not here for music when I am watching a pro wrestling. I'm also not here to listen to you sing it badly and off key.
Oh, because if that was the case, I was about to ask, how do you feel about the concert trope of the performers singing a song and when it gets to the chorus, they don't sing it and they point the mic to the audience?
No, that is acceptable. That is within the social contract. That's to be expected.
But not in wrestling.
I'm just happy that Shinsuke Nakamura put Japanese lyrics over his theme, so now people have to put up or shut up.
Oh, how do you feel about British sing-along chants? Because they make up their own songs.
Yeah, okay, that's different. Like, I am annoyed when people sing along with the entrance theme of a wrestler coming in to wrestle. Football chants, but for a pro wrestling, is dope. Football chants are dope. There's a cultural through line that makes it very interesting. You don't have to think when you sing along to the theme song. You just have to signify in the most boring way possible. This is so off topic, but I'm very glad I get to vent about this.
Oh God, we need a wrestling pet peeve episode. And then Ian's gonna go number 5, suicide dives. Number 6, tope suicidas.
Number 7, don't do the delete gesture. Even if you think you can do it right, it's not worth it. Let it go.
Okay, Thank you, Jack. This episode needs to happen. This needs to happen. This should happen. We should like blast it. That's the episode where all our social media people our followers will chime in.
Yes. Oh God. We need to announce this one well in advance so people can weigh in.
Well, that gives me an idea for another episode. So, your episode, the pet peeves of wrestling, and my episode would be the unspoken rules of pro wrestling. Such as, and it would be written kind of like mathematical properties, like you are more likely to go through a table if you set it up yourself.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Or your finisher gets 30% more stronger based off the amount of times it's countered. Hence why the RKO is really powerful at the end. Because he just builds up that damage meter in the early game.
Yeah, it's amazing because by declaring a move a special move, you've increased damage at least 100-fold.
Of course, and taunting always increases your move, the damage of the move. That's why, like, when Daniel Bryan does the knee, doesn't get the 3 count. But if he does the yes knee, ooh yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah.
Oh god,
it's a more complicated maneuver.
It's more complicated, more damage. All right, now we're getting off track.
I will say that I am going to be flabbergasted if AEW continues, which I see no reason why it will not, that at some point in time there will be a face Jericho in AEW. It'll be very interesting to see how that forms because of Jericho's position currently, at least in AEW. But I am going to put money on there being either a face Jericho or AEW ceases to exist before they have a chance to make Jericho fit.
Or it could just be Jericho acts exactly the way he is now, except that he's beating up bad guys.
I get paid the big bucks to be the big justice.
Well, I think that should be it for our discussion. That was wonderful. Thanks for covering for me as I had to go step out. But
no problem. I do want to just jerk the curtain a little bit. It is extremely funny because before we started the podcast, we had a bit of pre-show discussion, as we always do. And you said this was going to be a short one. We're going to wrap up by 8. And I just looked at the clock.
It's 8:47.
Yep.
Well, what happened was my commitment got pushed back, and I was like, "Well, we don't need to stop now." I wanted to write out the momentum, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I think we got some good material here.
Good material. Anyway, we don't, but that's just because I haven't been asking questions. That's why we've been jumping into the topic straight up.
Fair.
But anyway, thanks a lot, folks. We will be coming back 2 weeks from now with our next episode, whatever that would be. But looks like our viewers really liked how this discussion started off. So we'll probably come back unless there's another big wrestling event. I kind of want to go back to these fandom topics.
Yeah. Especially because I think we're actually at a downbeat for big wrestling. The next big one I think is an AEW thing in April.
Yeah.
No, the next bit. Well, there's Revolution, which is this weekend.
Yeah. Oh. AEW is this weekend, and I have been horribly behind on my AEW just because that's a lot of money for one pay-per-view for me.
Yeah.
So until Daikon, I guess we're just gonna we'll just hit the next topic. But anyway, listeners, thanks for listening in. Signing off. This is G with my co-host Ian and Jack, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good night, y'all.